Let's get these three. Let's get topic of today is the what are the biggest three warning signs that can knock a deal off track in real estate beside the weather that we face right now. I should say beside the weather, beside the snow, beside the out of power and things like that. So what are the
Well,
three?
hold on a minute. This is a good point. If you got people that are stuck in their house because of the snow, calling and check on them is a good touch point for your clients, right? You know they're
Yeah.
stuck in their house. They're probably bored. So give them a call and say, hey, just wanted to check in. We see how you're doing. See if everything's okay. You need anything, that kind of thing. It'd be a good touch point to communicate with your clients.
That would be a good time to pick up the phone and like Rob say, and do the SOI. So this is like the building the business, right? We got
Yep.
to only call. Now will be a good time to call and say, hey, are you okay? You know what I mean? Like, Obi, are you okay? How's the how I mean, do you still have power or not? Because even though Rob, in our family we have power, but like two doors over, like actually a street over, they all are out of power.
Yeah.
So
The
all the
subdivision
local
over,
transit.
they went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that'll be a good time to actually number one call. That will be a good pivot point to build your business. Is to this is time to call. So cool. So what
Well,
are the
Oh,
three?
hold on. Tony, say something.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I was going to add to that. Like right now, we have several properties under contract. And when the governor came out and put out a state of emergency, the way that our pre-printed portion of our Georgia Association of Realtors forms are set up, all the due diligence, all the financing, timing, everything is extended out based on the state of emergency timing. So we've been in the process right now of contacting all of our buyers, all of our sellers, saying, hey, even though it said 7 days on that due diligence, we're into a state of emergency, and that's going to extend it out for a while. So
Perfect.
it's an automated thing where we need to call everybody and bring them all up to date. And the big one was COVID. All of this started, because of COVID, because we were in a time where people couldn't get out, and all those dates were extended in the contracts. So,
mm,
we've been talking to a lot of our agents as well to make sure they're contacting everybody in their transactions to make sure that they know the state of emergency controls the timing of the contract. Now, that all comes down to what's happening in your state. That is pre-printed in our contracts.
wow.
That's good because if the state does not have that pre-printed, then you need to get that worked out quickly. As soon as that issue is happening and you can't get to that inspection or you can't get to that closing or whatever, then dealing with that up front with the buyer and the seller and the agents is critical.
And if you think about Nashville, they're sitting up there, with no power, and it's been off since Friday.
Yep.
All of those due diligence, agreements in those contracts are on hold because they can't do their inspection. Okay,
Right.
there's no utilities on in the houses. I mean, the water's shut down. Everything is turned off, and
Right.
so that controls a lot of the contracts when you have this type of situation going on.
That's right.
Yeah. Something to think
But
about.
and that goes into what we're talking about today. What are things that could derail a contract, right? And
Right.
weather could be one, right?
Yeah.
So you have to get ahead of it. One of the big things in keeping a contract alive and not having surprises is communication, getting ahead of problems. And usually I'll find that in deals, somebody is a better communicator than others. So sometimes you have a good communication style, but the other person does not, or the other agent does not, or the lender or the title company does not have the same level of communication style. And so, like Kim is an instant, I want it right now deal, right? I mean, whatever she wants it done right now. And so she makes a call, she wants to get it fixed right now. So other people don't have that same work ethic. So as the agent that wants to get things done, it's your responsibility to make it happen for the client. You're in charge of making sure this deal goes through for your client. Even if the other people are not doing what they're supposed to do, you got to stand on them and push them and be diligent about it.
Even if the
Exactly.
one woman show, and that happened a lot on, some of the deal that I've done, here in Georgia and Tennessee, and notice that they're just a little bit different because people don't understand that it's essence is the communication, like timing. When a person texts you back, especially when you do with a contract, like within, like, don't text them, don't take longer. Maybe within an hour, if you're meeting and all, but maybe maximum 2 hours, especially you have a deal that is in due diligence period. I have an agent that I was working with, the last deal I did. The due diligence is ending at midnight that night, and the guy didn't text me back until 5 p.m. of that day. You see what I'm saying? Now that's disastrous, and I even told him that. I'm like, that you got lucky that my client loved this house enough to try to work it out with you. Because technically, if they can get really upset and pretty much don't care for this property and they will walk away. And he's like, I know. And then so people just don't understand how due diligence works. So I mean, those one of the big thing for me would be for one of the big deal that breakaway is the due diligence period, the respect of the due diligence period. And glad that Tony was mentioning earlier that if it is weather like this, all the due diligence is kind of move, move with the weather. That's different than the person didn't communicate. So stay within the due diligence period. That will be a make and break in, at least in Atlanta, Georgia. In our contract, we're very clear. We say 10 days is 10 day. It's not if answer about it other than the weather.
Well, and sometimes an agent has to take over the deal or be more in lead because some agents just don't do what they're supposed to do. So you have to take control. And you call the lenders, and even if it's on the other side, and you call the title companies, and you kind of lead on the deal. Now, are you required to do that? You're not supposed to, but sometimes you have to get it done.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. We have a house right up the street up here that's for sale with another agent. And about a month ago, Pam and I showed it and didn't get a response. Just had some questions, and didn't get a response. Well, the property came off the market and the sign stayed up in the yard. He's about as responsive taking his sign down as he is returning a phone call. Well, this guy had an estate sale. Okay. He had an estate sale after all that happened. The sign's still sitting in the yard. And I just went up and, I introduced myself. I said, hey, yeah, we're just here looking at your estate sale. And he said, aren't you the guy that left the card in the house? I said, yeah. And he goes, how responsive was my agent? It's funny that he would ask me that question.
Right?
The whole reason that he was asking me that question is because that guy wasn't responsive to him either. So,
Right.
Mhm.
and being that he brought the question out, I had every right to be able to talk to him. And then I
Right.
found out the property was no longer listed anyway. And so now he's like, let me tell you something. As soon as I'm finished with this estate sale, I'm going to give you a call and make a change. And I said,
Mhm.
well, the thing that we really try to do is we want to be incredibly responsive.
Mm-hmm.
We want to respond to everybody as quick as possible. And I'll tell you,
Mhm.
you'll get a lot more business if you get a reputation of responding to people right away. If you get the
Yes.
reputation of being real lazy about things, hate to use that word, but if you get that kind of reputation, your business is going to leave you. And
Yeah.
it's just real important to be as responsive as you possibly can. The one thing that will tear down a deal is not being responsive. It
Yeah.
really will, because all of a sudden the deadlines start going
Mhm.
past, and then the deal falls apart. So you want to be right on top of those dates.
Well, and another thing that helps with is buyer's remorse because buyers will sign a contract. They're all excited at that point in time. They go back home, they sleep on it, and they're thinking, "What did I just do? Oh my gosh!" And they got little people snipping in their ears. So being responsive, communicating diligently, staying in touch with them. That keeps them on track, keeps them reinforcing that they made a good decision, right? Because otherwise, people have things that creep in their brain that talks them out of things. So even though it's their best interest to go forward, they have this second thought. So being responsive and communicative and being there to answer their questions is how you keep everything on track. Tony, you have everybody at buyer's remorse?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. You talk about Tony there.
Well, both of you, yeah.
Yeah, we get people that get buyer's remorse, and I get a little remorse of them sometimes, you know.
You get agent remorse, huh?
Yeah, right. Like I train agents, and I'll tell them right up front. The thing you got to remember about buyers are liars. I won't tell you.
Yep.
They'll
And
tell you
sellers are too.
I mean, we have another couple right now that's they told us all these parameters. These are the things that we don't want. We don't want this. We don't want this. We don't want to be in an HOA. We don't want a basement. All this, and then they'll look on our website and they're reviewing properties, and I get notified of what they're looking at, and I'm like, everything that they said they didn't want, they're looking at.
Of course.
So you just have to keep it. You have to keep it open. The thing is just don't pay a lot of attention. I mean, if they need 4 bedrooms, they're going to need 4 bedrooms because of the number of kids that they have. But if they tell you, hey, we don't want to live in an HOA. The other one is people say, I want an acre or more. I'm going to tell you, they'll take a half acre. There's not a lot of inventory out there right now. So
that's right.
Yeah. Let's see. Maria's got something in the text there.
It just happened to her.
Maria, you want to tell us your story?
Yes, I swear this is so funny. I just had this happen to me. I thought I was going crazy. Like, dude, are you serious? We are in contract. Shockingly, we kind of lowballed them and they accepted the offer.
Yeah.
And he freaked out. That's the only word. He freaked out completely. And then because he wanted to back out, you have to sign that release form. He wouldn't sign the release form. He wouldn't respond to my calls. He wouldn't. Yeah. So needless to say, I said, I think you need to, I don't know that I'm the person. Like, I don't know. Because you're harming my business.
Right.
Of being able to do future business with these people. I want, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And it was bad. It was bad. All bad. So I'm like, when you're really, really ready, then yeah, I'll help you. But as of right now, like, I don't think that you're ready for my services because this is unacceptable. And it wasn't until I sent him an email and said, I know you've gotten my calls. I know, like, we can discuss it if you have a question, if you're confused about it, but this form has to be signed. It's a legal document. And it wasn't until I worded it that way that made him he still didn't call me. He just signed it. All of a sudden it was like dot loop, Tad signed this form. Like, yeah, it was bad.
Wow.
That is a real thing, buyer's remorse.
Yes, I see.
Yep. But communication can help if you're constantly communicating with your buyers and sellers. Here's another thing. Make sure you put everything in writing, in email, text, in writing. Even if you have a conversation over the phone and y'all talk about some things, it is really good that you do a recap of our conversation on an email and then send it to them. The reason is if anything comes up, if anything negative comes up or a lawsuit or you said this or you told me that, you're protecting yourself by reiterating it in writing. That is critical in real estate. Even if you have a really good phone conversation and everything is good and they accept it, if you type it out in an email just confirming what we said and send it to them, just the fact that you sent that help. They don't even have to confirm that they got it. Just the fact that you sent it to them puts it in writing, so it protects you and keeps everything straight.
Rob, we're talking about, when things fall apart. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, if you take verbal offers, they're always going to fall apart. I mean, always. Because someone is going to say, wait a minute, no, we're going to change this, we're going to change this, we're going to change this. You
Yeah.
have to take things in writing. I won't accept an offer verbally. I just won't. I'll just tell them it's just not going to work. And
Yeah.
it's going to be in writing every time. That way we
Put it
can
right.
counter back in writing,
Yep.
back and forth in writing. We got everything signed off with a binding agreement date. If you think that you can do offers and you can counter back and forth verbally, all of that will fall apart. It will every
Yep.
time. So you may think, well, it takes less time to do it verbally. Yeah, you'll be in the business less time is what will end up happening. But
Well,
but I'll tell you, you have to take it in writing.
Yeah.
I will say that sometimes it's best to do it verbally and let the chips fall where they may, because I had I had these I was listing a house. This buyer came in, lowballed my client. My client, said, all right, we'll bring the price down like $5,000. This guy mirrored it, and I ended up telling the agent, because we were still like $40,000 off on where this house should sell at. And I told the agent, hey, my sellers just hung up on me and they're not answering my call. And he's like, oh, that's not good. He's like, let me call my buyer. Called his buyer, had a new contract over. I didn't even say anything else, and had him negotiate against himself to get the offer up to where it needed to be.
I'll tell
Mm.
you though, Tony, it's dangerous to do
Oh,
Yeah.
I
things.
know it was. And
Yeah.
again, I let it with how far apart we were, and I knew my sellers, they weren't going to accept it where it was, and I just said, let's try it this way and see what if it'll work. It did, but my sellers were like, we
That's
don't even
rare.
want to talk
Yeah.
to them anymore.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I was like, I didn't have anything to lose at that point.
yeah. Well, here's what I've seen that happens in verbal offers is they may go back and forth. They may say, yeah, we'll do that. And then they finally get it on paper and somebody says, well, that's not what I said, or I want this too, or that kind of thing, right? So that's
Yeah.
where it can end up. But no, what we get a lot, what I see a lot is, hey, will your client accept X? So agents are just fishing. And so the great standard answer is, well, put it on paper and send it over and I'll see what I can do. That's a great answer, because then they send a contract over, right? And then you talk to your clients, because in the negotiating part, when the last person says, I'll do it, if they sign it, then it's done, right? So doing it on paper helps protect the last person, because usually if it's done just verbally over the phone, when you get the actual paper copy, then it's not exactly what y'all decided on and somebody wants to change something or add something. Always tends to happen. But that's fishing is what it is. A lot of people will fish just to see what they can get.
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you something. If you're just visiting this call today, listen to what Rob says. Rob is super experienced managing agents, helping agents, walking through transactions. Rob's done it. And I want to tell you, really listen in. If you're new in this business or you're just wondering why things fall apart all the time on you, listen to experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, and don't be afraid to ask somebody. This is when I used to be the broker owner of 15 Remax offices, I'd have agents call me all the time and say, what would you do with this? Or how should I do that? Or this is not happening here. Or this agent's not calling me back. What do I need to do? So I would just give them a path on what to do, right? Well, you can do this and you can do this, and the next step is this, right? And then they go do it. And most of the time it would work out, right? Or it would not work out, but at least they made the attempt to do it. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Call a very experienced agent that you're working with, or somebody you're friends with, or the broker, to get some guidance on that. Tony's right on that. So you use and leverage the experience of the people around you to help you, for sure. So what else can do you have to watch out for in a deal so that it doesn't fall apart?
Well, depending on the state and how you operate, if you're dealing with an attorney, always make certain that before the attorney fires off a letter, that especially after you do your home inspection, that you're checking to ensure that that's what your buyers actually want for done, instead of just the attorney taking it upon themselves and saying, fix all this, when, some of it isn't really needed, because that can blow a deal, in the snap of a finger.
Right. So going through the inspection report or going through the appraisal and talking it out with your client and see how they want to handle it, right? Because sometimes you'll be surprised. Sometimes you'll think it's going to go one way, but they're going to go, "Oh, I don't worry about that," or "I want everything," or whatever. You don't know. So going through it and also talking it through so that it doesn't scare them, right? Because if they see all these list of items that need to be repaired, well, these are just normal home maintenance items. Or, hey, they're saying this needs to be done. Okay, well, this is how this would happen if you want it repaired, or if you want to ask for money in lieu of that and then do it after the fact, you could do that as an option. So you're giving them, going through and talking it through, giving them options, see what's important to them. Also, depending on what market you're in. If you're in a market where you're competing against a bunch of offers and they've got a lot of backups going on, then you may not want to go in and ask for everything, including the kitchen sink, right? But if there's a lot of inventory out there, then maybe you want to negotiate a little bit more on that, or maybe it's just a deal killer. Who knows? But having that communication with your client, finding out what they want to do, and then getting that across to the other side. But yeah, like you said, don't just blanket take the attorney's information and or the inspector's list and say we want everything without talking to your client. Handling expectations is critical in a deal, and that starts up front. Let's talk about an inspection. Even before you go out and start showing properties, talk to the client about what's going to happen when an offer is placed and an offer is accepted. Hey, once you get an offer accepted, then we're going to do the inspection, and then this is what happens. Now, when the inspection time is ready to order the inspection, talk to your clients about expectations. So here's what's going to happen. The inspector is going to go out to the house. They're going to take a look at all the systems and everything. They're going to find a list of things that are concerns or things that need to be addressed. And then we're going to go through and see which ones we might want to require them to do and or get some money for it, or just if it's too small, don't even worry about it, and we'll just close up the deal and get this thing closed. So set expectations even before the inspector goes out there, because the last thing you want to do is not tell them anything about the process, have an inspection report come out, and then the buyer sees it and gets all freaked out, right? So set up that inspection up front. Hey, Tony Williams, how do you handle inspections up front with the client?
Well, we've gotten to the place now where we do an inspection at the time of the listing. And,
Yeah.
we tell the seller, hey, let's get this house prepared to sell. And, we go out and give them ideas on what to do. The toughest part is now, with as many senior adults that there are selling properties, there is so much clutter in these houses. I mean, it's like they're keeping things for everybody. And
Yeah.
to declutter a house is so important. The way that we handle inspections, when the inspection comes through, let's say that, we have the buyer and there's a ton of stuff. First of all, we never ask for anything that's cosmetic. And I always tell my buyers, hey, look, when this inspection comes through, we're looking for things in here that you can't do yourself. Okay. We're going to ask the seller to get involved. Now, I will tell you this. I never ask the seller to do a repair, ever. What I do is I ask for some sort of compensation, additional closing costs, some buy down money, whatever it may be. That way it puts money into the buyer's pocket, okay? and they can do the repairs after closing. I found that if you ask a seller to do repairs, the buyer never likes what's done. Okay, never likes what's done, and
All
the
the
thing is,
time.
yeah, and then, but if you can put it back in the buyer's hands and say, hey, look, you can get your own vendor to do this after the closing. Now, let's say that the buyer, they want it all done before closing. Okay. What we'll do is we will go and do an amendment and say, the seller is going to pay uh, to the buyer's vendor of choice, and that money's going to be, paid at closing. And then we'll go find a vendor that can, fix whatever and say, look, you're going to get paid at closing. Is that okay with you? And a lot of them will say, yeah. I mean, they're looking for work. Yeah, that'll work for me.
Mhm.
And then, we'll put a line item in the closing statement where the seller has paid the buyer's vendor for doing the work that they did before closing. But if you can delay the work and give some sort of consideration back to the buyer before closing to do the work after the closing, everyone's going to get along because the buyer used their own people and they did the work the way they wanted to have the work done.
I totally agree with that. It's so much better to have a concession so that the buyer can do it after the fact. I totally agree with that. Been the best way to get deals closed, and everybody's happier, right?
Right.
The only exception that you have to watch out for is FHA. And so if there's a repair that's required by FHA financing, you have to do that before closing. But like Tony said, you can have a vendor of the buyer's choice do it and agree upon an escrowed amount that gets paid at closing. So for sure, doing the concessions is the best option from what
Rob,
I've seen.
having to do with FHA, look into the 203K FHA type of loan, because what that
Yes.
will do, let's say you have an investor and they want to do a lot of repairs and this house needs a lot of work. Well, a 203K will allow you to put the financing for the repairs in the loan, okay? And they'll approve the vendor that the buyer wants, and then they'll give them a certain amount of time after the closing to get the work done, and then that money is in the loan to pay it out. So
I like that.
talk to your lender about an FHA 203K in order to do the work.
Not many agents know about it or even know enough about it to talk about it. That's a good, because if you're going to do repairs on an FHA home anyway, why not look at that type of loan and get it really nice?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one thing to pivot into this. That's something, a conversation you should have with the buyer's lender before you start, because sometimes they might not be qualified in order to get a 203K loan, but you still want to check, because if that's an option, that just opens up so much more for you to show your potential buyer. I've had it where I had a guy and FHA would not let him get a 203K loan. He had to go standard. And it's just the way it is. But Tony is absolutely 100% correct. I do this all the time especially when I'm selling property as an investor. I will offer a credit out versus doing the work, because then this way the buyer gets to choose whomever they like. They, if they don't like the work that, I contracted out to do, then they're upset with the whole house and it brings the whole field down for them. Whereas if they have their opportunity to do things their own way, it works out so much better. And you, as the agent, looks like the rock star for being able to get them that done that way.
I'll tell you something
Absolutely.
else too. In that big beautiful bill that was just passed on July the 4th, we are investing more into Airbnb properties, Verbo properties, because a lot of those repairs are completely tax deductible now. Okay. And there's 100% depreciation. We don't want to get into tax discussion too much, but there's 100% depreciation available in an Airbnb now with short-term rentals. So check into what those are. If you just go out there and put in Chat GPT, what are the tax benefits of owning an Airbnb? You're going to see a lot of language that started up this year where there's people buying properties every month right now because they get 100% depreciation and they're able to bring down their tax liability so much for those repairs and for those. You put a washing machine in Airbnb and it's something you can write off. I mean, I'm writing off just driving to my properties to cut the grass. And you say, why would you cut the grass? Well, you wouldn't believe the tax incentive of going and cutting the grass. And but know those types of things because, and I know we're kind of, when we talk about that, we're kind of getting off subject a little bit, but the thing is if you can sell more properties by just knowing what's available to your buyers, getting an idea of what's available to your buyers, you can attract more people that way as well.
Well, that's a good point because if you're talking to your buyers and sellers and you're talking about real estate in general and you happen to mention, hey, have you thought about tax shelters or have you thought about ways to save money on your taxes? Well, here's one. And then they weren't even thinking that direction, and you just said, hey, I'll walk you through the process. I've done it before, or I know how, or you can take them down another path they weren't even thinking about because you have those skills, or you know that, or you know somebody who could get them set up with that.
Yeah, we made a change this year. We finally figured out that our tax guy was just an accountant
Yeah.
and he's not a financial strategist at all. And I asked him about the changes in this big beautiful bill thing with short-term rentals. He says there's some changes. Well, guess what? I went and found me a financial strategist instead of just a tax guy. So,
Right.
it's really important who you're talking to. Talk things about real estate to all these different professionals. You'd be surprised who knows what.
Mm.
Well, and that's critical too, finding the right people to consult with. Because, like you said, if you just have somebody that's an accountant that does taxes and just plugs in numbers in a spreadsheet, that's one thing. But if you have somebody that can say, if you do this and if you do that, you can save a lot more money, that's different.
Yeah.
Right. And you're able to hold deals together better when people look at you as an expert in your field. And
Yeah.
we don't have to be taxed, experts. But the thing is, if we know where to get the answers and they know that we know where to get the answers, you're going to keep people long term as they buy and sell property through the years.
Well, and that's where you get tons of referrals too, because if you know about this direction and you know about that direction and you know how to do this type of financing and this type of investment, well, people will start gravitating you. Hey, Tony, what about this? Hey, Tony, where can I find that? And so now you're the answer guy or girl, right?
Yeah, and Rob and Kim know this, but we base a lot of our business right now on our Google business profile with reviews. And when people see that you're getting good reviews because you're an expert in your field, you're going to get more business. We
Right.
ask people, we've got a couple we're going out with tomorrow, and we ask them, they're looking in the 800,000 range. They don't have to sell their property. They're going to sell their property later on. They've already told us they're going to list that property with us later on. And we just ask them, hey, what made you decide to call us? Well, it's your reviews. It's how people look at you as an expert in your field. So those reviews are so important because people read them. And if you can create that good transaction for a buyer, they're going to give you a great review.
So if you don't have your Google My Business set up, that should be one of the top things on your list this year to set up is your Google My Business and start getting those reviews put in.
Right. Yep.
That's
And one
critical.
other thing,
Yeah.
and you guys kind of mentioned this, having the right type of person for every buyer. Uh, I know I've got a home inspector who is great with first time home buyers. He will hold their hand, he will walk them through things. and he is just amazing. I have another one who, when it's a more experienced seasoned buyer, where he comes in, he's no nonsense. He will just tell you the facts because, these buyers, they don't care. They just want to go boom, 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 get it done, and, have the right people to use in your toolbox, so it's not just rely on only one person. Get
Right.
multiple people because that will help you so much more and enhance your business so much better.
Yeah, Tony, one other thing to think about that is let's say you have a buyer and they have an inspection and it says that the roof is 12 years old and the HVAC system is so many years old. The thing that you want to be careful about here is all of a sudden your buyer says, "Hey, I've got a good HVAC guy I'm going to send out there. I've got a good roofer that I'm going to have them inspect the property." And I'll tell them, I'll say, just make sure you're not talking to a roof salesman. Make sure that you're not talking to an HVAC salesman because they are going to find something wrong with that property to make the
God, yeah.
sale, you know?
They
And
want to sell it. Yeah.
yeah, they want to sell that new roof. They want to sell, and then all of a sudden your deal falls apart because that seller won't completely upgrade a HVA system that's working, okay, and it's putting out hot and cold air. But and what they had was is somebody out there that just wanted to sell a system. So it's
Hmm.
real important the type of person you send out for an inspection.
Oh God, yeah. I'm talking you get the qualified home inspectors. I'm not talking just bring out like, any Tom, Dick, or Harry that is, oh, this is a great roofer, this is a great HVAC guy. I'm talking I have like multiple
Yeah.
companies that do home inspections,
Inspectors. Yeah.
and
Usually
the
it's the buyer or the
inspector,
seller that comes up with the dodo.
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I usually, and I tell them like, hey, this is the one I recommend, but I give them like a list of three or four. They can always choose, but I will always tell them this is the one I recommend for you. I think they would do the best job for you.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, they'll go with that.
Yeah, and if they come along and that buyer says, "I've got a brother-in-law that's a contractor, I'm gonna have him take a look at it." Oh, get ready, you know.
There was a reel that came out, a
Yep.
meme that came out, and it was about the people were playing volleyball in a courtyard, and it had said, buyer, seller, everybody's pitching the ball, lender, the title company, everybody's going great, and all of a sudden the dad comes in and kicks one guy in the nuts, and the whole thing falls apart.
Oh,
That's
don't remind me
about
about
real and true, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my God, parents are the worst. When you have a younger buyer and they bring their parents along, I'm
Yeah.
just I question them and I say, when their parents start pushing back, one of my biggest things, so you're planning on living here with your kids? And when they
Yeah.
go, no, this is their house. Okay, then why are you telling them, how they should or shouldn't live?
Right.
We used to tell our agents, this was in the days when people got in the car with you, the decision maker needs to be in the front seat. And
Yeah,
if the mother, if she's the decision maker, let her sit up front and talk with her. But the
that's
thing is,
right.
you have to have the decision maker there when you show
Mhm.
the property. How many times the deal falls apart? A young couple is looking, then all of a sudden somebody in the family shows up to look at it a couple of days later and niches the whole deal. And
Yep.
yeah, now I'll tell you this too. The crazy thing that starts to happen to me at my age is when a young buyer comes along and they say, "Okay, you're my dad. Okay, what should I do?" Like they're my son, or my daughter. And I'm like, wait a minute now, you're going too far. You make the decision, like Tony said. You're the one that's got to live here. But we used to tell people, get the decision maker in the front seat. Honestly, a couple, like we try to figure out, some wimpy guy would come along, we put him in the back seat, put the decision maker up front, put the wife up front with us.
That's right.
So those
Yeah,
are
it,
simple
it's
strategy.
yeah.
Simple strategy, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so true about the parents. Sometimes they'll come along, or the uncle or somebody. But what they're looking at, and this is where how you can phrase it to the buyers, the other party are looking at with years of buying a house, selling a house, buying a house, selling a house, and then they say, hey, you should have this. Well, that's not a first time home buyer house. That's a 5, 6, 7 houses later house, right? But they're looking at it through a different lens. So that's why you have to kind of bring them down. Hey, you can only afford a starter home. You can't afford the pool in the backyard yet. That kind of thing.
Yep. Yep.
So how about appraisals? Have we seen issues with appraisals lately?
Yes.
I have not had any since I implemented my strategy. And I'm sorry, Kim, I'll quickly say this and let you say that, let you talk. One thing I always try to do is when I have an appraisal, whether I am working for the buyer or seller, I will always print out a copy of my comps and meet the appraiser there, and have my notes written on them on why I think this is a good house or not a good house that is a comp, and just say, oh, hey, here's something to kind of help start you along, to give that appraiser to make sure that that house appraises for where I need it to appraise, because I don't want to go through all the work and then it doesn't appraise, and we're out either money or having to look for another property.
Hey, Tony, I do that on refinances for rental properties. And then one thing I like to do is circle my number.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This is what you need to get to.
Get here. This is what we need
trick,
right here.
you can do. I didn't want to say that because I was like, well, I don't know if that's quite right. And I didn't want to offend people, but yeah, I totally do that.
The power of suggestion, right?
Hey, at the end of the day, it's the appraisal's based on opinion, so they either agree with it or they don't.
That's right. Well, and a lot of times appraisers get a bad rap, but they're really trying to find ways to justify where they need to get to. And if they can't justify it, then they're going to give whatever they find. But if you give them ammunition to help them get there, sometimes it does make a difference, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, another thing is give your buyers and sellers heads up on what to expect on the appraisal, right? So you can say, hey, based on what we've looked at, I think the appraisal should be fine, but let's say it comes back here. This is some options. So that in their head, they're already formulating what they might want to do if it comes out like that. Because a lot of times in sales, you're trying to plant seeds ahead of time. Because when somebody gets news and they haven't had a chance to process it, they get startled and surprised. They don't know how to act. But if you give them some suggestions up front, say, hey, if it does this, then this is some options we can do, right? And so they're already thinking about it. So when that comes in, say, hey, remember when I said if it does this? Well, here it happened, and so here's what we got to do, right? So now you can take it down a different path because you prep them mentally ahead of time. Same with sellers. If you could say, hey, look, I think it can appraise for what we're asking for or what we got a contract for, but if it does this, this is what our options are going to be, right? That kind of thing.
Well, if you're working with like in Tony and some of us in Georgia, there is like in Lawrenceville, the last one of the past 3 deals I had was the appraiser came in and say a declining market. So it would, and to a normal person, a declining market was like, okay, what's the big deal? Well, they were changing their requirements. So instead of like for my investor putting down 20%, because of a declining market, it will force an investor to put out 30%. And some investor are like, they couldn't do that. And it just happened to be, my investor were able to be able to do that. So, and the other one I just did was this property was so close to urban, suburban, and that too alone, it's like one, you could get a loan, one, you could not get a loan. It was like a close call. So appraiser, I mean, when you work with out there, urban, suburban out there, you gotta know ahead of time. You gotta let your buyer know, hey, we're taking a risk here. Or you go into a depreciating market like Lawrenceville. Some of the investment property out there right now, appraisal, I mean, it's almost killed that deal. But we were like, oh, we got it. So we were able. So I was able to use that. Guess what I got? I was able to use that excuse and got a whole new roof for my my investor, because my investor could afford it. But I said, you know what? We have to bring another $20,000, and we might or might not have it. And now with the 20,000, we needed a roof. So I mean, it's almost killed the deal. So I went to the seller instead of saying anything. I'm like, I tell you what, if you could put a roof in, which is about $10,000, and I want to see how can I work out on this end. So long story short, on that particular deal we just closed, we got the investor a brand new roof, and I am like a god to that investor. So all these little tricks so that way you can help your investor. So that's just one of the biggest thing I've did. The past 5 deals that I've did. Knowing the market and knowing how to use it to benefit your client and
That's
communicate
right.
with them ahead of time.
Yeah, because if you're working with the buyer and you get an appraisal that comes in lower, then you can leverage that for negotiating, because that seller's going to have to deal with this next time. Do they really want to put it back on the market? Do they really want to go through all this again and get another appraisal? And if it's in a declining market, it could be lower next time, right? So negotiate with them right then, and leverage that and go ahead and get the deal closed for sure.
One thing too is if it's an FHA appraisal, that and another FHA buyer comes along, that appraisal stays with that property for a minimum 6 months.
That's
Okay.
right.
And so,
Or
I'll
VA.
tell my people, let's take a real close look at this FHA appraisal, because, you can't take on another FHA buyer for 6 months if this won't work. Okay.
That's right.
And we really start to talk about the other question about appraisals that come up is, let's say that I'm representing the seller, and of course the buyer and their lender has ordered the appraisal. The buyer's agent comes back to us and says, hey, the appraisal came back good. And a lot of times they'll just say it came back at value, which means they don't want to tell us what it appraised for.
Right.
But always ask, were there any repairs required? Even though you have a good number, were there any repairs that are required? Because, it's going to come back to where your seller is going to have to do something if there were repairs required. I've got agents that'll call me and say, hey, the appraisal's good. And they haven't been in the business that long to know to look down the appraisal to see if any repairs are required. So always ask that, on the front end when you're representing that seller.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, this has been a great call. Lots of great information come out of this. I love this open forum thing that we can talk back and forth and share ideas with each other. So hey, we're going to see you next week, same time, same bat channel, and we'll have our topic out soon. We're going to get that squared away this week and get it out to you. So we will see you guys next week. But hey, stay warm. Yeah, don't have any frozen trees fall on you. Hey, if you have any ideas for topics for these Monday Masterminds, go to whygrowglobal.com, and in the events, it has a section you can actually suggest topics. So go in there and suggest some topics for us. We'd love to handle topics that you may come up with or deal with in the real estate industry. But this has been fun. We always love answering questions. Feel free to reach out to us if you need anything.
Yay.
Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a great week. Stay warm.
You too. Take care, guys.
You got 4-wheel drive. You can still go on appointments.